So, Craig, I appreciate you taking time to talk about your film, Everyone is Going to Die. And it's interesting because it's a little over a year before I actually first saw this.
I saw
Uh,
your review. I saw
yeah.
you. I think you saw it at what you saw at Midwest Weird Fest, did
hmm
you? Or yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. I saw it at the Midwest Weird Fest, and it is a film that really stuck with me. And even though I watched it again recently to refresh myself, I didn't really need to because when I thought of the title, it all came flooding back. So, if
Well,
you would mind, Craig, I always like to get this from the directors. Could you give just a little synopsis of what your film is about?
yeah, sure. So everyone's going to die. It sits comfortably in the home invasion genre. But I always kind of like to, in my writing, flip a genre and try and say something about society. But it's essentially about a father who's kind of a bit of a douchebag, trying to connect with his relatively estranged daughter on her 16th birthday and give her a nice time, and they sort of don't really see eye to eye. And then they get invaded by two masked, armed female intruders who uh, are really want to give Imogen a birthday that she'll never forget.
And
And they succeed.
they
Um,
they definitely succeed.
yeah, so it's a party with a twist, I would call it.
It, okay, sure, it's a party. Yeah, a
Yeah, no, yeah,
dark,
exactly. So
dark
so they
party.
they've
Very,
obviously got they've obviously got nefarious intentions, and at
yeah.
first you think it's a standard robbery, and then as time goes on, you realize that maybe they've been planning this for some reason, and I very much try to and hopefully succeed in turning the screw in a way that Hitchcock would, where it just ratchets and ratchets and ratchets, and then it all happens. I mean, it doesn't all happen. It moves.
Right.
The film moves, but all of the motivations and the arcs and the reveals all come crashing together in like the final 20 minutes. Alfred Hitchcock famously said that the audience only remembers the final 15 minutes.
Yeah,
And I actually have a slight bugbear with horror. I'm a horror nerd, always have been. But I have a slight bugbear that they don't stick the landing. Quite a lot of horrors just don't know how to bring it together because they've got this brilliant idea. They've got this great concept and they run with the concept, but it runs out of steam.
Mhm.
And it's like everything I write, if I can't land the ending, I don't proceed with it. I bin it.
Or a lot of times horror they might have decent bookends, but it's trying to get through that middle that, they hit you with the stinger for the first 5 minutes or so where you're like, oh, I'm really into this. And
Yeah.
then you get a half hour or 40 minutes where you're like, something gonna happen
Yeah.
soon, because you get the characters. And then in like the last 10 minutes, you're like, oh, well, now we're doing something, but it's never
Yeah,
really,
I mean, yeah,
it
I
never
know a
really
lot of
pays off.
I know a lot of writers who've got an idea. Yeah, like you say, they've got their act one, and they've got their end, and then they're just sort of petering through. I had 100-minute cut of this movie
Mhm.
because there's way more with him and his daughter, and then there's way more of like this weird emasculation. There was a scene in the bathroom where they're looking through all of his preening materials
Mm,
and going, "You've got more makeup than we have," but it was like, how long can I sustain the same thing?
sure.
So my movie's a lean 81 minutes, and it's like because it does what it needs to do, and all of that stuff. I liked a lot of those scenes, and there's some great acting and great dialogue and good ideas, but it was like I'm sort of repeating now, aren't I? I'm just saying the same thing again. So it's like,
Sure.
don't be afraid, kill your darlings. It's a very famous expression, and it's true. You've just got to even, I did test it with people and listen to their response, but in your gut if you're getting bored. Do you know
Sure, sure.
what
You made it. You're like, oh, this is great, but you're like, I don't need this. I mean, this is
Yeah.
great, but I really don't need it. No, that I like the runtime. I appreciated that quite a bit. I was just talking to a filmmaker last night. We were talking about their film Gothic Slayers. It's a comedy horror,
Great
and
title.
Yeah, it's a great title, and we were talking to them about how they trimmed things down, how they had a longer cut, and then they had to go through and kind of because I was talking to the editor, he's like he had to take out just a few scenes, but there were a few that were just going too long, and
Hmm.
they had to make the brutal decision of what to cut because you're right. Otherwise, I've seen those films too where they rinse, wash, repeat. You're like, I got your idea in the first 5 minutes, we don't have to reiterate it. And
Yeah,
that's what,
yeah.
and you're right. That's what you do here with this film. It just, it continually clips along. It's brutal. And what I like about what really caught me with this was, and I can see where you're turning and flipping things because with Daniel, at first you're like, okay, here's a guy who's not exactly great, but oh, this story is going to be about him and his daughter coming together, and
Mm.
kind of a was it the other, I forgot the other home invasion
Funny
movie
games or
with it had, I think, initially Dustin Hoffman in it. Which one was
oh,
it?
Straw Dogs.
Straw Dogs. Thank you.
Straw Dogs, huge influence on me. Yeah, you think it's going to be a redemption story.
Right. You
Yeah,
think you're going in, oh, this is going to be, they're going to have connection through trauma. They're going to band together. And then as you go along, you're liking Daniel less. And
yeah.
suddenly you see the motivation, but then you're not exactly liking your home invaders either. And suddenly by the end of it, you've flipped on who you actually feel sympathy for.
So I'm really glad you touched on that because one, that was exactly what I was going for. In that moment, Daniel thinks he's going to be a hero and he's going to show his daughter, look, I've got you, I'll protect you. But he's still doing it in a douchebag way. Like,
Yes.
small spoiler, she's got a mobile phone, a cell phone in her bedroom, and he shoves her in the loft. And she's like, or the attic, sorry,
Yeah.
I'm an Englishman.
No, that's
And
fine.
she's like, Dad, just let's just lock ourselves in the bedroom. There's a phone right there. We'll just call 999, which is 911.
Right.
And he's just like, get in the attic. It's just still because he thinks he knows better and he makes bad choices, But the other thing is um, these are traumatized people, right? So you can't defend what the invaders are doing, but you sort of understand by the end their motivation.
Right.
And I
Right.
I wanted to. I wanted to make a movie where it was all gray area, right? So human beings, we're complicated people,
Yeah.
and if your father abused you, you might end up being an abuser or an alcoholic or a drug addict. So it's like all of these people are compromised, which I think makes them real people, you know?
Well,
So
and I mean, I was happy you kept at least Imogen the innocent out of
yeah,
the. I was kind of happy because I like when we have at least one character that you can at least latch onto a little bit. Because
yeah.
if you get at the end sometimes and you're like, well, I could have just waited for everybody to die. you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I still tried to give, so I completely agree, but even Imogen's arc is redemptive. She has the one redemptive arc.
Right.
But at the start of the film, she's been sent home from school because she had a fight with her best friend. I won't say
Right.
why, watch the movie,
Hmm.
but she picked the wrong fight. Her fight should have been with somebody else because she has got a view of toxic masculinity that she's picked up from her father,
Hmm.
where she's like, well, men are just pigs, and of course they're going to do that. So my problem is with my friend. But by the end, when she's seen it all play out, I think she now gets it that actually life is a bit more complicated than that. So her arc is redemptive and she is an innocent, but even she's making, I was trying to bed in that if she continues down the road she's going on, she'll probably end up in a bad place as well.
Right. Right. And
So everyone does have an arc, and there's some really subtle things in there, and they're all based on things that I've witnessed in my life and things that I've
mm,
encountered. The one thing that I didn't, well, I won't make it a heavy interview, but there's been trauma in my past,
sure.
and there's been trauma for my mother because my dad was an abuser, and I've had friends and girlfriends who've had really bad experiences, and I hear and process these stories, and everything that's in this script, even though nothing as blatantly insane as what happens in this film, I've heard. I've heard people who traumatize people who want revenge,
Right.
and it's like, well, step back into empathy, step back into your heart. Don't go there. But they're so filled with rage, and it's like you're the victim here, but you won't be the victim if you do what you're talking about wanting to do,
Right.
you know. So it's like because some people are saying that I'm being exploitative, and I am being exploitative in that I'm pushing buttons, but there is a subtext and there is a reason for it. Do you know what I mean? I'm not the Terrifier guy, even though I very much respect what he's
Sure.
doing. I've got no interest in that.
Right. And I didn't get that impression. It just what caught me was, and I hope you don't take any offense, but the way the story is angled, that this was written by a guy
No,
because
I don't get offended by that at all.
because the tone and the message and everything about it, I would have sworn it was written by a female screenwriter, and I don't mean that as a slant at all.
No,
I
that's a
just
huge compliment. That is a huge compliment. I sent it to several female filmmakers that I truly respect. And one of them come back and said, this is a very important film. And one of the actresses actually said, oh no, actually, I think it was a crew member, but she said, I think it's really good that men are telling these stories as well.
Mhm.
I think that shows progress. But one of the females filmmakers I sent it to, who is very staunchly feminist, she said the world would be a better place without this film in it.
Wow.
So I was like, I was really torn because I'm like, okay, I've got feminist filmmakers on this side saying it's important that men recognize, and then I've got feminist filmmakers saying you're stepping on our toes, or
Right.
your male gaze is making women look bad, or
Mhm.
and I respect both of those opinions. So to hear someone say, "Oh, this feels like a female directed movie," that's a huge compliment to me.
And I can see where the person who maybe gave that feedback felt that way too, though, because it should be coming from them. I've met a number of folks like that as well, where this is a great film, but this really should be coming
Mm.
from us and not necessarily you. But it is still great that you're tackling it in a serious way, and the portrayal of the characters, their motivations, I think, aren't just out of the blue. You do establish why tragedy and comedy are doing this,
Yeah.
and I even liked the dynamic between tragedy and comedy and how that flipped a bit to
Mm.
where the
There's a power switch.
yeah, it doesn't exactly fit the names they've given each other
Mm.
exactly by the end of the film versus where it starts from.
Mm.
And so I thought that was interesting too. You have a number of, threads and dynamics and changes throughout this film, which I was very impressed with because it kept it interesting. Because you're like, oh, we're going here now. Even when you have a minor character show up, like Daniel's partner,
Mm.
show
Yeah.
up, it's like, oh, there's that relationship too. And you're just like, I'm not really feeling good about Daniel at this point.
No, no, no. Well, so here's an interesting, it's almost like an Easter egg, and I won't spoil it, but there's one shot, and it's just a very quick shot, and it's something Lydia's got in her hand, and it's the reason that she's come over. And maybe I'll get into it with you after because it's a spoiler, but for me, that's the most tragic moment in the film because nobody sees what's in her hand, so nobody knows, and that to me is a really great tragedy, and I've got my reasons why that's in there as well. But I'll tell you that afterwards in private so we don't spoil the film. Just rolling back on the female director thing, I've said to Saban, if by some crazy miracle that US does want to remake this film, and I think it should be remade with a bigger budget and more time on the script. And when I got to the end of the movie, I was like, "Oh, now I know how to make this movie. Can we
Sure.
start? Can we start again, please?" That was. But so I was like, if I said to Saban, if who are our distributors and have been amazing, so thank you, Saban. If it does get an American remake, it should be a female director. I
Mhm.
don't want to direct it again.
Sure.
I'll either produce and I'll rewrite it, or I'll work with them, but it should be a female producer because I'd love to see that gaze on
Sure.
it. Imagine if they, if you if you gender flipped this movie, how much more offensive it would, it's like,
That would be crazy. I could
I don't think it would work. I don't think it would work.
it would definitely not work. That would come off really
Really wrong.
that would be coming off really wrong. I could see that. So but the cast you assembled is a very talented cast. Brad Moore did great as playing a douche, as you put
Yeah.
it in your words. So I can use it, put it out there.
I mean,
He just played this character that I was just like, oh man, this is just
he let us pluck his eyebrows, and do you know what I mean? He let him put on this tight top, and he's like, preen yourself, Brad. But it really works for the character, and
Mhm.
it's really brave of him to put himself out there like that. I take my hat off to him, and he's like sort of known in the UK for playing tough gangstery types because England makes a lot of tough gangstery movies,
Yes.
and and he's like the heavy in the background and stuff like that. So it's like, okay, for someone who's like really trying a bit too hard and is a bit of a laughing stock, that you got to swallow your pride a little bit, So I doff my cap to, I will actually doff my cap to him.
Yeah, no, his performance was great, and I loved just he gets a break in the moment, just a little bit of spoiler, but near the end, when everything clicks, he does have that bit of break in the strong masculine front that he's putting up, and I
Yeah,
loved that performance that he did in there because it shows you just maybe he's
yeah,
been overcompensating for ages for many reasons. And
yeah.
there's
Their
actually,
their entire modus operandi was to hold a mirror up to him,
yeah,
and in that moment, that was the mirror, and he's
right.
looking at himself, and he's going, "Oh, oh, I get it." Do you know what I mean? And that that's their kind of their reason for being there, and he nailed that beautifully. Again, there's so many little Easter eggs in there because uh, I've got to watch it over and over again in the edit suite, and I need things that I need to get into. In that moment where he's like crestfallen, there's this glowing D
Mhm.
behind it, like a lit neon D, for D for Daniel, because he's that much a D for
Yeah.
douche,
Yeah.
because he's that much of a douchebag. And in that moment, that thing flickers and goes off, and that's his light is dimming sort of thing. So there is a lot. We had, not a lot of money, not a lot of time.
Mhm.
How do you make it visually interesting? How do you give
Sure.
it texture? And obviously the performances, obviously, but you can do interesting things as interesting as you can find within the frame as well.
Well,
And,
the
sorry, go
location
on.
the location you picked did have its own character. I mean, it
Mhm.
fit when you look at that house, you go, yeah, that's a house Daniel would have.
Right.
But at the same time, it also was visually interesting with the floors and the rooms, how you have things at an angle and not everything is just straight box. Did it take you a while to find this location or
It, we got quite lucky in that I think it was the second one we looked at, but we looked at many.
Mhm.
So the interesting thing about that home is when you're in it, it's like a film set. It's flimsy. You could break. It looks really plush and works excellently for camera. But when there's a struggle, it's not a spoiler. There's going to be a
Yeah.
struggle in the middle of the movie, and there's a bit of a fight. That was always in the script. It was a tumble down the stairs, and the gun goes flying off. But we had the stunt team there and the production team there, and they're like, the stairs will just collapse. They won't take the time. Well, this isn't a studio. We haven't built this for a stunt. You can't do it. They'll just collapse. And it was a little bit like, we'd be shooting and then suddenly a light fitting would just slide out. And we'd be like, cut. But it's perfect for, I mean, that even fits into Daniel's whole it's
Sure.
all show. Do you know what I mean? He probably wanted a $3 million house, but he could only afford a $1 million house. So he bought the one that looks like a 3 million. That house, when you see it on screen, that should have smart windows and
Oh
gates and
yeah.
you know what I mean? But it doesn't have any of that stuff.
But well, and what I found interesting too, it was kind of telling of the Daniel character when you find out comedy and tragedy how they came to be, in the you mentioned the attic and that, and you're just like, how would you not notice? I mean, that's just
Yeah.
it's like, hey, come on, man, you had to have at least noticed something off.
Yeah, he's in
Uh,
his own little bubble and his own little world. I did. I mean, you're so right. It's crazy, really, because they're right above him. But
yeah,
there's also a fun in that. Do you remember? I don't know what was that film, Stranger in the House, and
yeah,
Don't Answer the Phone, and do you know what I mean? The what's the
yeah.
one? House by the Edge of the Park, House by the Cemetery. Like all, there is a little bit of fun in me that I grew up with Dario Argento and Lucio. Look, in Suspiria, right? She's getting chased by a monster. She climbs through a vent, jumps into the next room, and it's a room just filled with barbed wire for absolutely no reason whatsoever. So when I grew up with stuff like that, I was like, you can get away with stuff if it's fun, if you're not really um, what is it? It's Blake Snyder says in Save the Cat, he says double mumbo jumbo.
Mm,
So audience will accept a bit of mumbo jumbo,
right.
but if you put some mumbo jumbo on mumbo jumbo, you lose them.
Yeah.
So, but cinema goes one of, but that is, I mean, I love that reveal because she's up there and she's like, what the? But when you break it apart, it is a little bit. But he's in his own little world. He's
He's-
probably got the earpods in and he's in the gym pumping iron. You know.
Now, how did you find your comedy and tragedy? Because these two really play off each other well. Kiara, Deanna, and Jamie Winstone, and I loved their performances as well. How did you find them?
So Kiara, I saw in Duke of Burgundy, which is a Peter Strickland movie, which is a wonderful sort of slightly erotic drama that she's just fantastic in, and she has this sort of like an ethereal aura about her. She's just, I don't know, she just exudes some sort of strangeness. And she's got fantastic eyes, and she spends a lot of the movie behind a mask. So I needed to find that expression. And Jamie Winstone is Ray Winstone's daughter. Ray
Oh, okay.
Winstone, yeah, is a British icon, and she's been in a bunch of UK stuff that probably didn't make it. One thing I would recommend if yours is a horror podcast is check out Dead Set, which was a Channel 4 six-part series with Jamie Winston and Riz Ahmed that is a zombie apocalypse breaking out on the set of Big Brother.
Oh, nice.
And it is fantastic. And she always struck me as brilliant in that.
Mhm.
And then she's been in a couple of other thrillers, and I was always like, I needed someone who could really hype themselves up. And she's pretty crazy, right? She's pretty wild.
Yeah.
And Kiara's sort of calm and ethereal. So we just reached out, and yeah, they both really liked the script, both really responded to the script. And very kindly trusted me. This is my first film as a director. So, and we had to have a very close relationship. There's a lot of, there's some intimate scenes in there, and
Right.
then,
Yeah.
you know, some stuff that's maybe triggering for women. There was a couple of lines in the dialogue where Jamie was like, I don't want to say that. That's pushing it too far. Can we come up with an alternative? And I came up with alternatives, and they were better.
Hmm.
So it was a collaborative thing. They were very trusting. But yeah, we put together our cast in my mind. So it's interesting you asked that. I've got anecdotes about everything. When I wrote this, I was living in the south of France,
Oh, okay.
and it was originally set in the south of France, and Daniel brings his daughter to the south of France to try to connect with her,
Sure.
takes her on holiday. But in the village he takes her to, he has a past, and it ignites the past. This film actually feels kind of French, if you do you know what I mean? Because
A
they
little
do
bit. Yeah. Hmm.
mature psychosexual dramas. So it was originally, the ladies were French, and it was that. Then COVID happened, and we couldn't do that. We weren't allowed to travel, so I rewrote it. But in my mind, when I was writing it, it was Isabelle Huppert, and someone like Tim Roth. But
Yeah.
I'm a first-time director. I'm never going to get these geniuses, but I still got geniuses.
Yeah.
I was still very lucky because the ensemble is pretty much perfect, in my opinion. You know.
Yeah, they all are very talented and bring what you need for these roles. You feel it for all. I've seen Kiara in Midnight Peep Show actually,
Yes.
so
Yes.
I got a chance to see Midnight Peep Show, so I recognized her in it. But yeah, everybody brings the weight to it, the seriousness to it, because it could easily play off a little hokey if you don't do this right, or it come off a little bit. Like, oh, you're just overdoing it. But
Yeah.
you seem to keep things fairly grounded throughout most of it. Were there moments, because as you mentioned, I mean, the ending was brutal. It was tough to watch. It was
It
tough
was
to
tough to
watch.
shoot, man. It was tough to shoot. Yeah, so we didn't have an intimacy coordinator, and then going into the last week, we didn't have any money left. But I was like, we can't do this without an intimacy coordinator.
Right.
So I paid for that because I was like, this has to be done right,
Right.
So we did everything right, but there were lots of, okay, take five, everyone. Do you want to go and sit in a quiet room? Do you, do you want to have a chat? And then, Jamie's, it admitted to me, I don't think she'd mind me telling you, but she's like, I did have a chat with my therapist after this, just the process. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Because they're going quite far. It's
Mhm.
not. Yeah, yeah. It's like it's very, very brave, and it was on set. It was heavy. Nobody was having a good time on those days. I mean, we were trying to keep it jovial,
But
but
yeah.
I had a moment of blocking right at the end where it's like, where are we going to place Gladissa in the geometry of this room that we've established? Gladissa plays
Sure.
Imogen. And where are we going to place her in the blocking? Because it doesn't feel right. Her slouched on the sofa, blah, blah. And I didn't know what to do. And the DOP was like, this will be fine. This will be fine. Because he had his shots.
Right.
And Tony Miller, the DOP, is a genius, by the way. But I was like, it doesn't work for the drama. And he's like, it will look beautiful. And I'm like, it doesn't work for the drama. And it was our only head to head. And the actors were like, guys, do we need to be here for this? Can we just go and have a moment and not see you guys argue? But then it was actually Kiara who's like, why don't I stroll off and grab a chair and place? And I'm like, that's what I needed. So that wasn't when you see that moment in the film, which is
Sure.
very powerful, that wasn't me. That was Kiara. And I couldn't find it. I had the whole film shot listed and blocked out, lens choices, everything. But in that one moment, I was like, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And then I just got the mental block and a little bit of panic. And that was it. But it was the wrong time because everybody's getting hyped up for this drama. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it's an interesting place being on set. The things that the things that you don't see coming.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I've had the pleasure of working on a couple sets over the years from people I've met, and yeah, it's. I don't think people realize just how it is on a set of a film behind the scenes before you get that shot.
Making a film is like you have to build a city in a month,
Hmm.
live there for a month, and then dismantle it in a week. Go. It's just until you see it's like you need sanitation and you need catering and you need accommodation and you need parking and all of these things. It's like I always say, like, when you watch a movie that's set in the desert or set in the past or whatever, I say to my girlfriend, it's like if you just do this, there's just like trucks and barbecue stations. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Mad Max isn't an apocalypse, it's a city. There's 100 medics just right there, you know. So yeah, it's funny. I just want to very quickly, you might mention him anyway, but you mentioned Midnight Peep Show. Midnight Peep Show, the two directors, Andy and oh my God, I can't remember the other guy's name right now. Well, it's really bad. I'll get it by the end. But anyway, Andy Edwards, he edited this movie, and he did a brilliant job, and he was very supportive of me. So I just want to give props to the editor because he did a wicked job, and he's a great guy.
Yeah, I mean, you for your first directed feature, you got a lot of you managed to get a lot of talent in here and location. Like you said, you did run into budget issues, but I don't think any indie production
No,
had had
for sure.
hasn't run into that. So it's
No.
like, so you hit all you checked all the boxes in there, and I was just wondering, especially near the end, there are a couple scenes, and I don't want to spoil it, but it does get very intense. Were there times when you wrote it and you got on set and you were shooting, you're like, is this going too far? Am I
Mhm.
showing too much? Am I not,
100%. When we went into the assembly edit, uh, Andy had to cut it with cut the assembly cut with the producers because I was like, oh my God, what have I done? And I was like, I can't sit there and watch it yet. I was
Right.
like, I think I needed 2 months before, and they were cutting, and I was like, look, you've got the script, you've seen all the footage, I'll trust you with the first cut, I'll come in, but I literally can't sit there every day and watch a couple of these moments and a couple of these scenes. I was just like, it'll, I had a little, crisis of faith. I'm like, is this misogynistic? Is it? I don't think it is. But at the end, because you're seeing it play out, right? You've written it, you've pictured it in your mind, you've got a picture of it in your mind, but then when you're seeing it play out, you're like, are we really doing this? You know,
It's reality now. Now it's like there, and
yeah,
you're, and then you build on. Well, now other people are going to see this, and now what's
yeah.
going to?
Well, I was like, have I ended my career at the start of my career? Just very quickly on that. I've actually been in the industry for 25 years. I used to work in publicity and marketing at Disney, and then I've produced a bunch of movies. So that's how I managed to get certain people is that I do
Sure.
have, credits, etc., etc. But this is my first directing gig. And I wanted to make a statement with my first directing gig, but it's like, how bold a statement do you
Oh, so
make?
but you mentioning you worked for Disney. I'm like, oh, so that's where you got your dark side from. That's great. Okay, there you
Yeah,
go.
exactly. I went from Disney to Fox, so I went from Satan to being from hell to being Satan's PA. Disney actually treated me beautifully for all of the, but yeah,
Well, no, we joke a lot. My friends and I joke a
no,
lot about how Disney doesn't like parents. And I'm being a parent myself, but like every other movie is like, oh, the parent died, the parent's
yeah,
gone, the parent died,
yeah,
the parent treats the kids like crap. You're
yeah,
just like, it's like, what do you got against parents? They're not all
yeah,
bad.
yeah. No, that's
Um,
right. That's right. Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, of course, many of the criticisms of Disney are valid, but obviously did
well,
treat
yeah,
me very well.
no, but
Um,
I joke,
and I
but
also want a career in this industry, so I have to be careful what I say about
if you're
Disney.
looking for a Marvel film, I love Disney. I'll direct it for you.
I do have a problem with Marvel because when I worked there, obviously, the whole Miramax thing,
Oh
but
yeah, yeah,
it was Miramax and Touchstone and stuff. Disney was making great movies.
right.
Disney made Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
you know, and people forget that. And it's like, as soon as Iron Man was the world's biggest success, it's like, oh, we're not going to make good movies anymore. We're done with it. So, and I'll say that to their face. I'll say that to Mickey Mouse's face.
You'll say that right to Mickey Mouse's face. And if it's Steamboat Willie, you can even put him in your movie. So there you go, right?
Yeah. Okay, topical.
But speaking of Disney and art, you have some wonderful masks for both tragedy and comedy. Where did those come from?
That's 100% props to the art department. I actually, I'll give props everywhere. Another friend of mine, because I was like, they're masked intruders, and one of them has this personality, and one of them has that personality, and then they go on a journey, and at some point they cross over. That was always in my mind. But a good friend of mine, who's also called Craig, he said, "Well, you're talking about comedy and tragedy," and I was like, you're a genius. You're an absolute genius. And so someone else, I'll always give props when an idea gets offered to me by somebody else. I'm not one of those guys. So thank you, Craig, for that. And then so I just went to the art department, Jason Kelvin, thank you for doing such a great job. Um, Apart from the day when the squib didn't work. But
Well, that was all his fault. Yeah, that was bad. But no.
yeah, that's always going to happen. But yeah, no, I just said, look, yeah, so they're comedy and tragedy. And then he was like, these are the masks that I've found. He gave me a selection. I was like, I like those ones. And then when he brought them to set and they'd been, had the work done on them, I was like, oh, this is really going to work. This is, and I think that was the first time I got excited, instead of just nervous. You
Sure.
know, I was like, okay, now we've got a movie that looks like a movie.
And not to give spoilers, but what would you say is one scene that you thought was going to be just a huge challenge for you, like just massively difficult, but it came off without a hitch? Like it came, like, wow, okay, that actually went really well.
It's absolutely the scene where they're at the computer and they
Oh,
and
mhm.
you find out that they know him essentially, and then they try and humiliate him. I thought you've got a child in there, even though she was over 18,
Right,
but she look at and there's a lot of blocking, a lot of dialogue, a lot of exposition, and then a fight. And
right.
I was like, that's actually the day where the squib didn't work, where she shoots a vase and the vase was supposed to explode, but it just sort of we reshot it by the end of and you'd never know. But other than that, that scene I thought was going to take 3 days, and we got it in a day and a half.
Oh,
And
wow.
everybody nailed their marks, everybody nailed their lines. The shots look great, it looks beautiful. The fight sells, like
Mhm.
um and then there's a whole action sequence that's really exciting. So I thought that was going to be the trickiest bit of the film, and it was probably the easiest bit of the film.
Nice. And
I think
it
I underestimated that the actors were going to get a bunch of juicy stuff to do and say, and so they were relishing it.
yeah.
So that took the onus off me. Almost didn't have to do any directing at that point. I'd just say happy, well done, thank you, moving on. You know.
Well, it is one of the many great scenes in it, and yeah, so you got your first directing gig here. Did you like directing? Is it what you wanted? Is it something you want to
Brilliant
continue?
question. Brilliant, brilliant question. I hated it, uh, but I hated it because it's about mine and people I know's trauma, right? So
Sure.
it's not, I'm not making, Naked Gun.
Right.
So I hated it because I was like, I tell you what I didn't like about it, and I'll answer if I'll do it again.
Sure. Yeah.
But what I didn't like about it was I was like, I'm when I'm writing, all I'm doing is creating characters and creating scenarios that didn't exist before. And that's really fun. It's like, oh, this character exists and these scenarios exist now because I wrote it. And that makes you feel a little bit godlike. But when you're directing, I was like, these actors have lives and mental health and careers. And am I scarring them now?
Right.
It's like, is
Yeah.
this is this gonna repeat four
Hmm.
years from now where that person goes, I did wish I didn't do that movie that went too far. And we did talk about this. We did discuss it because I don't want to hurt anyone with a movie about her. But there's a weight and a responsibility with directing that isn't there with writing. Because writing, these are fictional characters and nobody
Right.
gets hurt. And in the movie, they're fictional characters, but they're real people. So the thing that I wrote straight after this, I write in my spare time, I write 3, 4 screenplays a year. Um, and the thing I wrote after this was a thing called Girl Racer, and it was a little 10-minute thing, and it's the sweetest, loveliest Pixar short you've ever seen in your. In fact, I sent it to Pixar because I know Pixar. I
Sure.
sent it to Pixar just going, you should make this and put it on the start of one of your films. This is a Pixar short. It's like the beginning of Up. It was the schmaltziest, loveliest,
Yeah.
most beautiful thing about a young girl playing video games with her dad. And I needed to purge. Do you know what I mean? I needed to go, I'm not a psychopath. I just had stuff that I wanted to say. So straight after, I was like, I want to be a writer. I never want to direct again.
Hmm.
And then people were like, give it time, wait till the film comes out, wait to see. And people have been like your good self in your review have said that I did a good job. And then so I started writing. I got very unlucky, but this happens a lot. I started writing a Shark in the Thames movie, Shark in the River Thames movie
Sure.
called An American Shark in London. And and it's a brilliant script. I've got a brilliant concept for it. It's a little bit like Ghostbusters, weirdly.
Sure.
And I was like, I could direct a shark movie. I could absolutely direct a shark movie. Like, there's no trauma in that. That's just great fun. So then I was like, oh, I'll get excited again. And then flipping Javier, who's been a great support to me, went and made Under Paris, and he's like, I've got a Shark in the Seine movie, and I was like, okay, I'll rip that script. I'll find something else. Well done, thanks, man. But I really love that script. So if anybody out there has got $5 million and wants a Shark in the Thames movie, I'm your boy. But so I am now. I'm right. I've written a movie called Wraith that I would very happily direct, and I'm writing another one that I don't want to spoil yet,
Sure. Sure.
that I am going to be directing later this year. And it's kind of an Evil Dead 2 to Everyone's Going to Die, where it's like, I know how to make that film now. So let's do it again. So it's not another home invasion movie, but it's a hostage situation with subtext about the world we live in. So it's not a retread of Everyone's Going to Die because it's a completely different story, but it's my wheelhouse. So it's like, okay, if I had more money, more time, I'm not under COVID restrictions. I
Right.
know what I'm doing. Let's give that another go. Just like Sam Raimi did with Evil Dead 2. So
Sure.
it's a nod to my hero. It's like, well, he can do it, so I can do it. So
There
I'm
you
gonna be
go.
shooting that. I'm gonna be shooting that this summer, and I'm very much looking forward to it.
Well, I will say that, when if you're looking at a film that you made with everyone going to die, and you're like, I don't know if I can make that again, that's a good thing because if you come off going, man, I really loved making that
Yeah.
movie, then you may want to back off. But the fact that you're hesitant on it gives you, shows that you still have perspective on it, and
Yeah, yeah. Well, like I
you're
say, I'm not the Terrifier guy. So
right.
and again, no disrespect, he's doing his thing, and there's a huge audience for it. But I watched Terrifier, and I thought this is a great old school, really strong
Mhm.
horror. And then I watched Terrifier 2, and that genuinely traumatized me. Like that, I mean, that
Yeah.
traumatized me more than my film. And I was like, oh, I would never go this far. And then I was like, I'm out. So I haven't seen Terrifier 3
Well,
because,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I was like, I've still got my I get, I'm a father and I'm
Hmm.
49 now. And whereas I would have probably loved Terrifier 3 when I was 18, I'm a bit more sensitive now, and a bit more so I'm just like, I've done the big, strong, uh, ballsy debut. Now let's make some really entertaining. I still want them to have something to say, but they don't have to say that.
Well
I've
said.
said that. I've said that.
Well, thank you, Craig, so much. This has been really great. I look forward to your next project. Is there a place where people can keep up with you on what you're doing, what you're working on?
Yeah, I mean, you can follow me on Instagram, just my name, Craig Tuohy. I do have a Patreon, but I haven't really done anything with it
Sure.
yet. But the one thing I will, if I'm allowed to plug something,
Sure, go ahead.
I'm writing a book called The Filmmaker's Triangle, because I've had 27 years in this industry. I've worked on 400 movies, Face Off, Pirates of the
Mm.
Caribbean. I'm saying Face Off because I've got a signed John Woo poster on. Sixth Sense, etc. I've worked in marketing, publicity, sales. I've written, directed, produced. I've come up with a system for career decisions and career development, which I call the Filmmaker's Triangle, that I'm putting into sort of a career development book.
Oh, cool.
There's Blake
Mhm.
Snyder's Save the Cat and Hitchcock on Hitchcock and or Truffaut and Hitchcock, but this is like the entire film ecosystem
Mm.
for people who haven't been to film school, essentially. And so I'm writing that at the moment. I think that's going to be out in June. So just keep an eye out for that. I'll probably do a Kickstarter for that at some point, but I don't have any particular links. Find me on Instagram or Facebook. I'm very friendly.
Well, excellent, excellent. We'll put links in that into the body description of this podcast. And thank you, Craig. Finally getting to talk to you after seeing your wonderful film. It's out. Everyone is going to die. I recommend it. It is a heavy film, but it is worth a watch, especially if you like your home invasion films. So thank you very much, Craig.
Thanks for your time, Mark. Have a nice one.